I've been a military spouse for several years, and it's given me a chance to see a lot of this country, more than I would have if I hadn't been married to a man in the military. But I think what took getting used to more than all the moves and more than, the making friends and having to leave the friends was learning to get good at rolling with the punches. Everything changes in the Army. That's a given. Moving is a good example. In the Army, they call it a PCS, which stands for a permanent change of station, which I think it's funny in itself because as a military family, we don't stay anywhere for very long. It's certainly not permanently. For example, you could be told you're moving to point A, but then it changes and you're moving to point B. But what actually happens is you end up moving to point C. And even after you're at C and all settled, they can come back and say, hey, we want you back at point A. So not only does it change, it could change at any time. There are no guarantees. Additionally, the Army likes to sprinkle a little extra excitement into your daily lives, making some things seem a little more dramatic than they really need to be. One such experience happened many years ago, early in our marriage. We were stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. We didn't have any children yet, but we did have a dog. His name was Murphy. Murphy was a black lab pit bull mix. He was strong and stout and very sensitive. This 100-pound tough boy would shiver and quake at the sight of a moving box or a suitcase, and he would climb into them if he could, just to make sure you took him with you. Not the best combo for a military family with our frequency of moving, I know, but. So we had planned a trip down to Fort Benning, just a quick in and out overnighter. We had the suitcases out and Murphy was in them. So I thought, all right, we'll take him with us. It's just one night. That turned out to be a major planning error on my part. We got down to Fort Benning, dropped the dog off at the hotel, went out for dinner. Came back around 9 p.m.-ish, opened up the hotel room door to find our dog lounging on that classic hotel chair, wing back in the corner. As soon as Murphy saw us, he dropped his head because he knew he was not allowed on the furniture. But as he climbed down, I noticed he wasn't moving quite right. About then, my husband Kevin said, hey, I'm going to take him out for a walk real quick so that, before we go to bed. I said, hey, I'm good with that because I sure don't want to be the one to have to get up with him at 2 a.m. because he's got a deuce. So several minutes later, though, Kevin popped his head back in the door and said, hey, babe, do we have anything to clean the carpet out here? Because Murphy's been throwing up like all through the walk and he's still doing it. Really? I said. And then Murphy walked back in the room and I could see his stomach was way bigger than it needed to be. So right about then, I'm starting to get red flags going off in my mind. It's reminding me of a dog we had when I was a child. We had a sweet old English sheepdog who had the same signs. So I turned to my husband and I said, Kev, I think we're going to need to find an ER vet like ASAP. My husband wasn't tracking yet. He said, what? Why? He's just throwing up. So I explained, I think he has bloat. We had a dog like this when I was a kid, same signs. If anybody owns large dogs, they're pretty familiar with bloat. Well, it's when the stomach swells up with gas. They don't know what causes it, but if it fills up with gas, it has a chance to flip and twist. If that happens, it cuts off the blood supply and oxygen, everything down the line. And the dog won't make it if it's not caught fast. So we had to find a place quick. Amazingly, we found an ER vet 1 mile down the same street that the hotel was on. We jump in the car. I called ahead to let them know we were on our way. We get there and the vet and techs are outside waiting for us. Is this the dog with the bloat? I hadn't told him that, but yes, it is. So They rush Murphy in, do a few quick tests, and they come back to me and say, yes, Mrs. Trujillo, Murphy has bloat. We think his spleen's ruptured too. We need to get right into surgery. I looked down at Murphy laying at my feet, and his stomach was impossibly bigger. I said, yes, of course, please do whatever you can. So the waiting game began. We ended up heading back to the hotel room to try to get some sleep because we didn't know how long the procedure would take. About 3 a.m. though, the vet called. Mrs. Trujillo, Murphy survived the surgery. Took out his spleen, but he'll be all right. He does need to stay here though for 24-hour monitoring for the next several days. Oh, the next several days. If anybody who owns a dog knows how quickly they become a member of your family, and you want to do everything you can to help them. But right about that time, I was also hearing the cash register in my head, because this was supposed to be a quick trip and it wasn't supposed to be expensive. Now we're paying for emergency vet, emergency surgery, 24-hour monitoring. And this is where the Army, complicates things. The husband, he can't stay. He's got to be home in 24 hours because he leaves the next day for training. Of course he does. So now we're also looking at a very expensive last-minute flight home. We find it, but our trip to the airport wasn't uneventful. My husband's at the wheel of our then Jeep Liberty. His well-honed defensive driving skills were being tested that day. Why? Because there were not just one, but two cars on the road that day, seemed intent on preventing us from getting to the airport alive. I know that sounds a little dramatic, but I'm not exaggerating. There was some serious maneuvering going on at the front wheel. And I could have sworn it was at least one time where the Jeep was on two wheels. No sooner did we successfully avoid the first car accident, did a second car start to aimlessly drift across 5-6 lanes of traffic that was the major highway to Atlanta. Maneuvering recommenced at the wheel. In the meantime, I'm in the far back of the Liberty, slamming into the sides of the car while I'm trying to transfer his gear from our shared bag to a bag he can take with him. And I look up and I see the car. Watch out! On the right! Do you need these shoes? Whoa, on the left! What about this shirt? I'm a little panicked. My husband at the wheel, cool as a cucumber. No response. You'd never know that we had almost died twice. Cool as a cucumber. And because of that, he got us to the airport alive. I might have been a little frazzled looking, but we made it. And just in the nick of time too, because he took off at a sprint from that car to his gate to catch a flight that he should have missed. I ended up heading back to Benning to wait on Murphy. We finally got the all clear about 3 days later to make the long drive home. And when we made it home, I opened the door to find a large, beautiful arrangement of roses in my favorite color with a card next to them on the table. Because it was also my birthday. I had completely forgotten until I saw the flowers. But Kevin didn't forget. And that made it all okay.